The 20th century was the bloodiest era in mankind's history. Scientific progress increased, but instead of helping man, it led to the manufacture of great weapons that aided world wars and massacres. Knowledge became more public. People became more aware of their rights. As a result, colonies began their fight for independence, and the brutality of colonizers introduced the mass killings of the African people. Hello, I am Sheila Nelima, and in this edition of Africa Today, we will dig into one of the bloodiest disasters of the 20th century, the Rwandan Genocide. We shall also update you with the latest information on COVID-19 in Africa, our weekly newscast, and of course, read your comments from social media. So stay tuned.
Rwandan Genocide.
Following the arrest of Félicien Kabuga in France, a man believed to be the Rwandan genocide main orchestrator, although the issue dates back to at least 26 years ago, discussions surrounding the subject are rising. But who is Félicien Kabuga? We asked Keith Hammond Snow, a genocide investigator recognized for over a decade of work on war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide.
Félicien Kabuga was the wealthiest man in Rwanda in October of 1990. Up until 1994, he was the wealthiest man in Rwanda. He was a billionaire. He had businesses in coffee and tea, some in communications. He was definitely involved in importing, exporting, for example, farm implements. He was in basketry. He was in adzes and hoes and machetes. Machetes are, almost everybody in Africa, in many places, everybody has a machete. But the RPF narrative is, and the British narrative is, that Félicien Kabuga imported these machetes with the intent to commit atrocities, slaughtering Tutsi people.
Between 7th of April and 15th of July 1994, during the Rwandan Civil War, an estimated 500,000 to 1 million Rwandan lives were lost, marking one of the darkest points in the African history. The scale and brutality of the massacre caused shock worldwide, but no country intervened to forcefully stop the killings.
100 days of death and desperation. Rwanda's dark past still present in the minds of so many.
Nothing has the power to turn Rwandans against each other ever again.
The RPF invaded northern Rwanda from their base in Uganda, initiating the Rwandan Civil War. Neither side was able to gain a decisive advantage in the war, and the Rwandan government, led by President Juvenal Habyarimana, signed the Arusha Accords with the RPF on 4th of August 1993. Habyarimana's assassination on 6th of April 1994 created a power vacuum and ended peace accords.
The rain makes me think of having to run away during the genocide in April 1994, says Jean. I had to hide in the forest. Those who survived were completely exposed to the rain. We didn't know how to protect ourselves against it.
Each time in April, I feel very anxious and sick because I remember the genocide. It's like a film in front of me because I can remember very well. There was nowhere to hide. We were sitting when the first group of killers came. They told us to pray that the next group would come within 15 minutes. We prayed. After we prayed, the Interahamwe took us to Kabiza, where they had dug many holes.
But our question is, could the Rwandan genocide, this real disaster, have ever taken place without foreign intervention?
The Rwandan Patriotic Front invaded in October of 1990. Britain and the United States and Canada turned a blind eye to the massive international crime of the invasion of a sovereign country in October of 1990. On the invasion of the RPF, lost control of one of its countries. It lost control of a lot of economic power. And that control was taken over by Kagame, serving the interests of the United States, Canada, and the UK, for example, including Israel. Israel was a big player in this.
RTLM, a Rwandan radio station, which broadcasted from July 8, 1993 to July 31, 1994, played a significant role in inciting the April-July 1994 genocide. It is said that the radio was sponsored by Felicien Kabuga, but Mr. Hammond Snow has a different view on this.
Felicien Kabuga was not the director of RTLM. He was one of the founding members. And RTLM was just one of the many radio stations that existed from 1993, 1994. The RPF, Rwandan Patriotic Front, Paul Kagame's people, backed by the United States and Britain and Canada, were also broadcasting hate genocide radio. But this part is never brought out because it doesn't serve the powers that be, which would be keeping the Kagame regime in place so that many people can make a lot of money. Now, they took all of Felicien Kabuga's businesses. They took all of his mansions. They took all of his networks. They took everything away. The last thing that the Rwandan Patriotic Front wants is anybody in a position to be able to challenge the narrative or their power holding.
France also actively supported the Hutu-led government of Juvenal Habyarimana against the Tutsi-dominated Rwandan Patriotic Front. France provided arms and military training to Habyarimana's youth militias, the Interahamwe and Impozamugambi, which were among the government's primary means of operationalizing the genocide following the assassination of Juvenal Habyarimana and Cyprien Ntaramira on April 6, 1994.
As a result, Rwanda repeatedly broke diplomatic relations with France. The Rwandan government shut down all French institutions in Rwanda, including schools and cultural organizations, with only some being subsequently reopened. The language of instruction in Rwandan schools was even switched from French to English.
I'm not an employee of Human Rights Watch. I don't know who they are. I don't care who they are. About Amnesty International, I've never gone to them for help. I don't give a damn what they say, what they do. It's none of my business.
In the analysis of British journalist Linda Malvern, documents released from the Paris archive of former President François Mitterrand show how the RPF invasion in October 1990 was considered as clear aggression by an Anglophone neighbor on a Francophone country. The documents are said to argue that the RPF was a part of an Anglophone plot.
According to Belgian intelligence in Rwanda, French diplomats advised opposition politicians that if they wanted to stop the RPF, they had to give their support to President Habyarimana. But the question is, what was the role of the United Nations? Could they have stopped this tragedy?
The Rwandan Patriotic Front had plenty of opportunity to stop the killing of Tutsis later in 1994, but they refused a ceasefire, and this is because they wanted absolute control. And the RPF was backed by the United States, Britain, and Israel, and Canada primarily. And General Romeo Dallaire for the United Nations served the interests of the US, Britain, Canada, Israel, and the RPF. There was never any chance that the United Nations peacekeeping force could have kept the peace in Rwanda. Not only was their mandate massacred at the time by the powers that be, but there was no intention that the UN, they were never given the opportunity to try to stop the warfare because Kagame was too powerful. And he was too powerful because the United States was backing him, Canada, Britain, and Israel.
France and Belgium supporting Hutus on one hand, Britain and US supporting Tutsis on the other, it seems these Western powers found a place to fight and perpetrate atrocities, one against the other, with the least possible loss for themselves and a great loss for Africa, amounting to almost 1 million Rwandan lives in only 4 months.
United States, Canada, Belgium, and Israel, with a backing Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni, invaded the Belgian Congo, otherwise known as Zaire, under President Mobutu, the United States' person. But remember, Mobutu was very close to the Republican American establishment. And what happened was Clinton backed the invasion of Zaire and took over control of the Congo.
Thank you all for staying tuned. On to our weekly news. Angola has reduced its oil for debt exports. The cut comes as Angola advances its talks on debt repayment terms as it deals with the impact of COVID-19. China is the most impacted country as it is the biggest creditor to the South African state. Now, in the tech world, Senegal's futuristic crypto city has been estimated to be complete by 2029. The said city, named Akon City, is to run purely on renewable energy and the Acoin cryptocurrency. While initial reports estimated the costs at $2 billion, recent reports have revealed a figure over 3 times more. Now, on to Sudan. The Security Council has passed a resolution to establish a new political mission. The mission is to assist Sudan in its transition towards democratic rule. Specifically, the mission shall handle peace building, civilian protection, and the rule of law. Following in Jack Ma's initiative, Beijing has committed to supplying Africa with 30 million test kits per month, 10,000 ventilators, and 80 million masks. As reported by President Ramaphosa of South Africa, it is to support the continent in the war against COVID-19. No specification was given as to when or how the initiative will be carried out. Now, the African Tourism Board has set up a rescue mission to save Africa's tourism sector. It rounded up different entities and individuals from both private and public sectors. The team, dubbed Project Hope, holds meetings to brainstorm on mechanisms of boosting wildlife tourism during this pandemic crisis and post-COVID-19. Now, in the art scene, Africa's looted artifacts are believed to have been placed on sale in a controversial auction. Christie's auction, named Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the North America, has orchestrated the sale of a number of African artifacts, yet can only account to the origin of one, but not the others. Included in the collection were the Akan terracotta head from Ghana, Benin bronze, and an Urhobo figure from Nigeria. Now, this brings us to the end of this part. Visit our social media pages as shown on screen, interact with us, and share your views on the program. Stay tuned for more.
COVID updates in Africa.
"2020 has marked the battle of the world against the novel coronavirus. In less than 5 months, 7 million people have been infected and more than 400,000 people have been reported dead. The situation in Africa is getting more severe day by day.
Africa is also home to many epidemics and endemics such as malaria, Ebola, and cholera. WHO modeling has claimed that the coronavirus could infect more than 200 million people in Africa.
In the past week, there has been a 51% increase in the number of reported cases in my own continent, Africa, and a 60% increase in the number of reported deaths. With the current challenge of obtaining testing kits, it's likely that the real numbers are higher than reported.
In Lagos, Africa's largest city, the main food market is packed with shoppers. Social distancing is not being enforced. For many Nigerians, securing food every day is far more pressing than heeding the government's guidelines.
For more information, we asked Linda Masarira, a Zimbabwean politician and the president of the Labour, Economists and African Democrats Party. How bad is the situation in Africa?
The situation in most African countries is extremely bad to unexplainable levels. In Zimbabwe, for example, we have lower officially recorded numbers of COVID-19 cases. And social security has become a major threat where most families are now living in near destitution. Africa is highly donor dependent, and it is a continent that has been waiting for foreign ideas, foreign money, foreign funding. Considering that Africa is not a highly social security continent, her performance compared to Europe is a sign of failed leadership. This is a wake-up call for all African leaders that they have to stop being over-dependent on Europe, on the East, and start making sure that the mineral resources we have in Africa will create social security for all Africans and ensure that Africans have got proper healthcare facility all across Africa.
Despite all criticism, Africa is proceeding to tackle the COVID-19. For example, Madagascar is proceeding ahead with COVID organics. Some experts have argued that coronavirus would never disappear, but rather it will become endemic. That is why Madagascar has not waited for a European, American, or Asian solution and made its own indigenous treatment for the virus. As a result of the island's isolation, Madagascar is home to various unexploited plants found nowhere else on Earth. Many native plant species are used as herbal remedies for a variety of afflictions.
Andry Rajoelina has officially launched a medicine he believes can prevent and cure patients suffering from COVID-19. Developed by the Malagasy Institute of Applied Research and branded COVID Organics, President Rajoelina presented the so-called remedy to the press on Monday.
All trials and tests have been conducted, and its effectiveness in reducing the elimination of symptoms has been proven for the treatment of patients with COVID-19 in Madagascar.
President Andry Rajoelina of Madagascar slammed the World Health Organization for not endorsing COVID organics, saying, "Will they doubt a European cure?" We asked Linda Masarira's take on the issue.
Seriously, no European proffered solution would attract a negative reaction, such as the Madagascar cure for COVID-19. How many medicines have been shipped to Africa for trial on human beings? Yet in the case of Africa, who needs statistics of success for them to endorse it? I believe that if all Pan-Africanists, if all African leaders would rally behind Madagascar in this regard, we might be able to curb the spread of COVID-19 in Africa. I believe in African solutions to African problems. I believe in African medicines for African people. We cannot continue waiting for the West and the East to come with medicines that work for them to use them on people of African descent.
In the past weeks, Burundi has also kicked out WHO coronavirus team for interference in internal matters. What is the root cause of some African governments' distrust toward WHO, namely Burundi, Tanzania, and Madagascar?
Who is highly dependent on aid from Africa's former colonial masters and those who are always trying to control Africa's trajectory? This in itself, and the continued way in which Africa is always treated as a non-human continent, gives a reason for mistrust between African governments and foreign aid-dependent organizations.
The story of Africa and the novel coronavirus does not end here. With all its damages, coronavirus is making Africa to blossom in some fields. The COVID-19 pandemic has also led to school closures across the continent. Everyone, parents, teachers, students, and even government, agrees that e-learning is the only way to keep students engaged and learning during this period.
Nigeria has launched its first indigenous e-learning platform, Roducate, which offers the most comprehensive solutions needed to adapt e-learning on the massive scale that it is needed.
African countries in the past 2 weeks have eased COVID-19 restrictions. For example, South Africa has softened its coronavirus restrictions on houses of worship, with President Cyril Ramaphosa announcing that religious gatherings will be allowed under strict conditions. Under the new regulations, houses of worship must keep facilities clean and sanitized, limit congregations to fewer than 50 people, and require participants to wear face masks and maintain social distancing.
It would be a good idea if there was to be a national day of prayer or a moment during which there could be prayer for this or against this virus. And so we are going to finalize all the details with them so that we arrive at an appropriate day, time, and hour, so that the whole nation of our country, South Africa, can join in unison in a moment of solidarity with those who are affected, but also in interceding with our Creator against this virus.
Mandatory face masks, ban on non-essential travels between regions, and maintaining social distance are the prescribed measures taken by African countries while slowly easing the lockdown. But as it is said, it all begins with ourselves. Take good care of yourself during these days of the COVID pandemic. Welcome back. In this segment, we are going to look into our social media activities. In a recent episode, we aired on Libya's escalating situation. We had at Olenkare stating, Haftar is a total letdown, all puffed up and no fight. We also had O'Brien Gwenya stating, this chaos was caused by the United States, interfered in the sovereignty of Libya, sponsored terrorists that ripped it up till today. Gaddafi was better in uniting the country than this rubbish. At Caractacos stated, the Haftar side doesn't want a NATO-backed government, stealing Libya's resources and murdering its people. We also had Bomgala stating, Sisi is a puppet dictator who has killed and hanged his opposition. Now further on, due to the ongoing unrest and the protests over the killing of one of our own, George Floyd, together with the rest of all our black brothers and sisters who have died under police brutality and the racism pandemic, our viewer, Mohammed S. Nam, tagged us in his post, stating that, #Black Lives Matter. Please, do not forget to highlight this unfair action of the American police, which has been happening for years. The U.S. has always raised racism. We have seen such behavior in Israel, armies as well. Racism, Israel is a terrorist country. Our heartfelt condolences to all who have been victims to racist hate and police brutality in the United States of America, in African continent, and all over the world. Indeed, we cannot stress it enough. Black Lives Matter. We have come to the end of our program. We appreciate all the feedback. Thank you very much for staying with us till the end of the show. Do not forget to keep in touch via our social media platforms. As from me and the entire team, it's goodbye for now. See you next time.